Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pickleball Physio, a podcast where we talk for pickleball athletes' health and injury recovery prevention and just overall wellness so that we can stay on the courts, play more games, and have a good time while we're at it. I'm really excited because today I have a special guest, Casey Atwood. Casey is a registered dietitian nutritionist. She and I had the pleasure of meeting Casey at the beginning of June. We met at a healthcare provider live event. Essentially, a bunch of us were getting together to try to see what we can do to improve what healthcare accessibility looks like. She and I had a great conversation about what Casey is doing. Casey is a blogger. She is blogging with her knowledge of dietitian, nutritionist information and wealth of knowledge and sharing it with people who are wanting to learn how to stay healthy with their eating while they're on the road with her blog RDontheRoad. So welcome, Casey. I'm super excited to have you here today with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really, really thrilled because there's a lot of crossover between what you blog about with being on the road and wanting to eat well and pickleball athletes, because many of us will travel for our games, our tournaments, to meet up with friends. And everybody always has questions on how we can stay healthy and well nourished when we're traveling. So can you share a little bit more on how you got drawn into blogging and your knowledge about staying healthy with your eating while you're traveling?
I've been a registered dietitian for over 15 years, and I've done a lot of different things. And so I've done work in the clinical environment. I've done work in the hospital environment. I've done work in research, which was really fun. But I've also been in culinary and food service and things like that. Kind of a wide variety of things that I've done in the past. And, what I really love to do personally is I love nutrition. I love food science, and I love to travel. So these are all just kind of spawned from, my history of being in dietetics and being a nutritionist, and then kind of combining all these things that I love. And then, so what's kind of happened is when my family or my husband and I, when we travel, we're always trying to kind of optimize the best feeling. So we want to feel good when we travel. So we want to feel refreshed. We want to feel energized. We want to feel like we are really enjoying our time when we travel. And so we're constantly looking for, those foods that are going to bring us that energized feeling, those foods that are going to nourish us and feel good. I am a foodie and I love food and I love to explore different things, but I also really enjoy the nutrient density of foods and what that can bring us and that health that it can bring us, even and especially when we're on the road. We want to feel good and we want to optimize our performance, and whether that's in athletics or for work. A lot of people are traveling, and so that's just kind of where all of this spawned from. Is just my love of all of these things kind of transforming into this realm of blogging and RDontheRoad. So
that's so exciting and kind of the ultimate dream to be able to pull these specific passions and turn it to something that you have a platform to freely share about your knowledge and what's been working for you and things that other people can experiment with and try out to see how they can just continue to keep their health and wellness. I think that's really, really exciting that you've been able to create this blog. And blogging is such an readily accessible and easily accessible medium because everybody's wanting to read and everybody has something to say. And so I'm really, really grateful that your knowledge and your resources are now accessible to all of us pickleballers too. A couple of things that I wanted to have you share a little bit more about. You're talking a lot about traveling on the road. I know a lot of your stuff has to do with camping and outdoors, but there is a lot of preparation that is involved with any of that, especially for those of us who are athletes. What are some of the top 3 things that we should consider when traveling as an athlete?
When I'm traveling, and especially I think, for an athlete or anyone in athletics, or really anyone in general, hydration is probably one of the most important things. And so that's something that I really struggle with when I'm traveling. And I think that that's pretty common, is to find readily good sources of water, whether you're in the airport and you can't take your water bottle with you, or you're looking for water and you're having to pay $7 for a bottle of water, or if you're on the road and you're traveling, and then once you're, in athletics and you're really needing to stay hydrated, that just compounds that need for that water. So I would say just really preparing for that, staying hydrated is one of my keys. It's going to help with your digestion. It's going to help with your energy levels. It's going to help with so many different processes in our body, and just overall feeling rested and hydrated and things like that. But that can come from, foods can be hydrating. If you can find some fresh fruits, those are going to be hydrating foods. Vegetables are going to be hydrating. They're full of water and fiber, which is going to be good, but they do have, hydration in them. So those are some things. And then watching out for that caffeine intake. We know that caffeine can be kind of dehydrating. And so that's another thing that I personally have a challenge with, is especially when I'm traveling, I'm probably grabbing a cup of coffee. I'm going at the coffee shop and I'm wanting to, find something, stay awake and things like that. So that's something that, again, these are things that I just kind of struggle with. And I think, oh, maybe everyone kind of struggles with that, or maybe most people kind of struggle with how to stay hydrated on the road. There's things that you can do by taking, regular water, but then also infused water and lemon and herbs. And so all kinds of things you can put in your water to infuse it, to give it a little flavor, to encourage you to drink and stay hydrated. And so there's just kind of some other things to think about. Soups are also going to be hydrating and things like that. So just those foods that are going to be full of water is going to be a good choice. And then also just trying to find some hydration through just regular water. So that would be the first key.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that for a little bit before we move to the second part, because I think that it makes a lot of sense that, oh yeah, of course, there's like water and ways to be hydrated through the different foods that we eat too. It's not just chugging a bunch of water every chance that you get, sort of thing. There's other ways to kind of balance that out with other things that you're intaking. I know that it's different for every person depending on the way that your body is and your activity levels are and such like that. But in general, what's kind of a guideline that some people can aim for when it comes to how much water they maybe should try to drink in a day or in an hour, or what are some goals that some people can try to have in mind when it comes to hydrating themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like you said, it is different for everyone. It's going to be different if you're sweating a lot, especially for an athletics, you're going to need more water. And so that number is going to be a little bit different, but generally your 8 glasses a day, that's pretty good starting point. And of course, if you're going to be, like I said, if you're going to be sweating and you're really working out, or you're in a competition or at a tournament or something like that, you're really going to need to up that quite a bit. As far as, everything else goes, it's just trying to, I would say, sip on it throughout the day too, and not just chugging that water a couple of times a day, whole thing of your water. I would try to sip on it throughout the day if you can, if you have that readily available to you. And then obviously, again, if you're sweating, you're going to be needing more throughout the day. So
makes sense. And it's important for us athletes to remember that, especially if we're having a game day and there's only so much time between games, assuming you don't have a bye and you go from one straight to the other. So instead of just chugging water and having all that fluid, then having these fruit alternatives or vegetable alternatives to kind of help replenish some of those nutrients and nourishment, and also get the benefit of water is what I'm taking away from that.
Definitely.
So what else can we do as athletes to stay healthy and nourished when we're traveling?
So planning some meals and snacks ahead. So it's going to be, taking some things with you. So I'm always going to take some nuts and seeds. That's always going to keep me going to help me with my blood sugars. It's going to help me feel I can't find anything and I'm really hungry, a handful of nuts. I know it's, nuts nuts and seeds, it doesn't sound very satisfying sometimes, but sometimes that can really bring you to your next meal. I always take, a bag full of nuts and seeds and some dried fruit. That's just going to give you a sustained energy throughout the day. But then just plan out some other snacks throughout the day to take with you. If you're at the airport, you might even look ahead and see what's available, what kind of restaurants might be available, where can I find something that's going to be a go-to for me, that's going to provide a good source of complex carbohydrates, a protein, maybe some vegetables, a whole grain, anything like that. Just planning ahead can be so important. And although a lot of times we don't have time to do that, our fast-paced lives, we don't have a lot of time. So in those times, I would say just pack some snacks and then hope for the best if you can find some good snacks on the way or some good meals on the way. So that'd be number 2, is just kind of planning ahead, at least some meals, bringing a few snacks with you.
It's in a lot of ways very doable. Many people in the pickleball world, right? We love our food, we love our snacks to have nearby. If you do happen to be one of those individuals who buys in bulk and just packs some of those snacks ready to go when you're traveling. And like Casey said, most of us have a destination in mind when we are going to play games for tournaments or meeting up with friends. So if you do know anybody in that area that you can get recommendations for food, places, or restaurants, definitely reaching out to your connections in that area.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
But like Casey said, sometimes we're so focused on getting to the game, we don't think about the food until after all the day's over. So give yourself some compassion with that for sure. But that's another great tip. So we have hydration, we have packing snacks and looking ahead for other food places that you could potentially eat. What is something else that we might want to consider as athletes traveling?
Something that we kind of think about a lot, and especially in athletics, is like those, to me, the macronutrients. So we're kind of always thinking about, the carbs, the proteins, the fats, and everybody has their method for what fuels them properly. But something that we don't spend a whole lot of time on is those micronutrients. And those are so, so important for our performance. They're really important for brain health and our energy level. And that's going to include those vitamins and minerals and those phytonutrients that are really, really important in those leafy greens, in all your cruciferous vegetables and things like that, in your fatty fish as well. So your salmon's going to include those micronutrients are just so, so important for us. And again, I don't know if we really spend as much time on focusing on those kind of foods, but we're really missing out on a lot when we do not focus that, because like I said, there's so many processes in our body that food is information. Food is providing all of this information that our body is using, translating and using up. And so it's so, so important to really kind of think about those micronutrients. One of my favorites, and always my go-to, is those cruciferous vegetables. So that would be the broccoli, the cauliflower, the Brussels sprouts. Not everybody loves those kind of foods. Sometimes we can find those that are done well and they have just done really well, but they're just so high in nutrients. Of course, all fruits and vegetables, there's a place for all of them. And so that both raw and in the cooked forms, there's so many good things in both of those types. So whatever you like and whatever you can get, even an apple or an apple skin has some really good micronutrients in it. That would be my third thing, I guess.
That's so awesome. So hydration and snacking, looking ahead, and then these micronutrients that a lot of us haven't been spending time really delving into and eating a lot. When we're considering these micronutrients, is there a difference or consideration for maybe what we should try to eat at the beginning of the day before our tournament start versus what would be better to have ready to go after our day is done? Is there a difference, or is it pretty much blanket spread? You could be eating these on either end of your day.
I would say either end of it. You definitely want to fuel your morning with those really high density, nutrient dense foods. If you can find some whole grains that are going to have some good nutrients, vitamins, minerals, things like that in them. If you can find, your oats or your, whatever kind of whole grain for that, that morning time, your fruit, berries, so anti-inflammatory, so many good things, but can also take that to the end of the day to where those micronutrients are going to be beneficial in all kinds of recovery, and as well as your protein and your carbs and things like that. But so many of those vitamins and minerals are going to be used in that recovery process as well. So I would say both ends of the day for sure.
Yes, which is very important. A lot of us, we're in a rush to get to our first game in the morning. A lot of
Yeah.
times events will start as early as 8 a.m. Some people don't eat breakfast that early, but this is just another professional sharing with us that yes, please do eat your nutrients, get those valuable nourishment elemental pieces into your morning before you go and play even that first game of the day,
So
because that,
important. Yeah.
yeah, very important.
So important.
And it also helps to kind of reduce the chances of cramping up when you're on the court
Yeah,
too, to make sure,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, which is really huge. Something else that I know is kind of an elephant in the room with a lot of athletes is when we're traveling, a lot of times we're kind of nervous or conscientious about, well, what if I'm constipated, or what if I get the runs? How do I plan for that or control for that? Because sometimes we don't know what food we're going to have available there. Do you have any input on how to kind of monitor or manage those sort of instances or events when we're traveling?
That constipation when you're traveling, that often happens because we're not staying, well, we're in a different environment. We're eating different foods. Like you said, your nervous energy and things like that, your stomach is just not working like it normally does. The thing that works for me all the time is staying hydrated. It just really is so important. Our digestive health is staying hydrated. So that's key number one. Key number two to me is that fiber. So that fiber is going to be really important to be including, fibrous foods into our eating plan. That's your whole grains, your fruits with the skin on, your apples and your with skin, and potato with the skin on it, or something like that. So any of those foods are going to provide us with some good fiber. There is all kinds of different fruits and vegetables that you can get on the go, or just take with you in a little baggie or a little mason jar, or however you want to carry them. Those are my top two things to kind of focus in on, is that hydration and then just that extra fiber. And that's going to help you on both of the ends, whether you have whatever your issue is, really. So
yes, kind of managing that digestion and being able to have some predictability takes a lot of mental focus off of, how our body is feeling, so we can focus more on the game. And so if we can find ways as pickleball athletes to kind of plan ahead and control for some of those variables, that I think a lot of us are going to be much, much happier with the way that our stomach feels when we're out on the courts. Because it can be really, it could make or break a game if you are not able
for sure.
to get through that, which is really, really awesome. Some of the takeaways that I want to review is, again, hydration, making sure that you're getting some quality snacks, some nuts, even getting into some foods that are like fruits or vegetables that have water in them, and then also getting into your micronutrients like the cruciferous vegetables like Casey was mentioning, and then again staying hydrated, getting the fiber that you need, and then also making sure that you're supplying yourself with some protein and antioxidants, which a lot of times we hear these and we're like, oh, that just sounds like everything, but at the same time it's portioned in such a way that it's doable for us. We're not expecting ourselves to have every single piece for every single meal every single time. It's like Casey was saying, you can snack on these in between your games. You don't have to sit down for a full-blown meal between each game. Obviously take a break, get lunch when you can, because you don't want to just be snacking only. But there's a lot of little ways that we can make sure that we're keeping our body fueled and keeping our body hydrated when we're traveling for our pickleball tournaments. So Casey, with that in mind, would you be willing to share a little bit on kind of what one of your meal plan days might look like when you're traveling? What's something that you like to start your day with, or have in the middle of your day, or towards the end of your day?
Yeah, definitely.
When you typically travel on the road?
When I'm traveling, I'm normally in the morning looking for fruit. I'm looking for definitely oats, and you can find oatmeal pretty much anywhere, honestly.
Very much so.
Parfait, when I was traveling recently, actually, when we were in Florida, that was one thing that I found at a couple of different places. I was like, okay, yogurt parfait. You've got your probiotics in there. We've got some fruit in there, helping my digestion throughout the day. And so those are kind of my go-tos, something kind of easy on the morning, but full of fiber antioxidants, all kinds of nutrients in those foods. And so, and then looking for protein as well. And so yogurt's going to be a great source of protein. Things like that would be great. Eggs are a great source of protein as well. That yogurt, a Greek yogurt, if you can find that, per serving usually has about close to 18 to 20 grams of protein in it. So that's a great protein
great.
to start out with in the morning. For lunch, I'm usually going for, I'll do, a bowl or a salad or something like that for lunch. It just depends on what your next tournament is, or what you're moving to next. You might want to look for, on the menu, looking for, whole grains for sure. That's going to be those complex carbohydrates, quinoa, brown rice, a wrap would be great. Anything like that's going to provide you with your protein in there, your whole grains, and then maybe some veggies in there as well. So you kind of have all those good combinations, but definitely some good protein and complex carbs for lunch is what I'm usually looking for. And then snacks throughout the day. I'm looking for, if I'm at the airport, I think last time I was looking very limited choices sometimes, especially in smaller airports. But I think one place I found some jerky and a cheese stick. Sometimes you're just kind of like, okay, this is as good as it's going to get today. Sometimes you'll find an energy bar or something like that, and that might be it for you. But things like that can be really pretty satisfying and really kind of fuel you on to where you can actually get a good meal and still feel pretty good. If I skip meals, I definitely will start to get a headache. Blood sugars will start to crash. I'll get really tired. And so I'm constantly looking for I can grab some jerky or some nuts, or even if it's popcorn, sometimes I'm looking for that if I'm traveling around looking for snacks and things. So those are kind of how I start the day, and then dinner is just kind of whatever you find.
Yes, absolutely. That's when you kind of get to sit down and do
and then you can enjoy. Hopefully, by that time you can really enjoy yourself. Yeah.
Right. And I imagine most of us, we'd like to not have to travel the whole entire day without, having a meal that we can enjoy. Another question that I had on that. So we have those little meals that we eat throughout the day, or little snacks that we can have throughout the day. But a lot of times with pickleball athletes, when you're traveling too, maybe you want to enjoy a nice dessert, or some people like to enjoy a glass of wine and stuff like that. Is there anything that they can do for themselves to still enjoy those sweets and desserts, or still maybe enjoy the glass of wine and not compromise the nourishment that their body needs? How do we balance that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's room for all of that. That's at least my philosophy, at least. And there is definitely time for all of that. So with the dessert, I would say, enjoy that dessert for sure. If you can enjoy it with a friend, that's great. Small little, desserts can be great. Just a couple of bites of dessert can be very, very satisfying. Sometimes fruit is great for dessert. And so we kind of don't think about that as always, it's not very decadent. So we don't think about that. That's, that can be very sweet and very satisfying. So, sorbets and fruits and things like that can also be really good. But if you are at a restaurant, you're wanting it to have a nice dessert with your friends or your colleagues, then definitely go for it. So that's my advice on the dessert. And then as far as, your wine goes, just making sure you're staying hydrated. And one thing I do kind of think about is, when we are on the road, and just any time, is our bodies are constantly trying to detox from all of these things that are happening in our environment, whether it's the water we're drinking, the food we're eating, our hormones, or, that's something that we're detoxing from. And then medications, we're detoxing from that. And so all of these things our liver and our detoxification system is working to detoxify all day long. And then we add alcohol on top of that. It really has to work a little bit harder. And that's just something to kind of think about when we add in that alcohol. It's like our body is going to be a little bit more, possibly a little bit more stressed from all of that extra work it's doing. But there is a place for that, I think. And just making sure we're staying hydrated, and then supporting our bodies with those nutrients that are going to help with detoxification. Yeah. So we have this really amazing system that, it is our detoxification system is really amazing. But we have nutrients and information from these foods that can support that. And that's where that kind of comes into that cruciferous vegetables and, those kind of foods that can really support our detoxification system. So those kind of things can be added in throughout the day to kind of just support our system better. And then especially if we're adding that alcohol onto it. So
which is very important. And I'm really, really glad that you shared about that, because we want to be able to enjoy what we eat, enjoy what we drink, but still support our bodies as athletes and as travelers to make sure that we're taking care of our body and our system, and not throwing any wrenches into the mix when we're trying to make sure that we're well nourished for our games. And I'm very much in agreement with Casey that there's a place for it. You just got to make sure you're balancing it with the right nutrients. And I mean, I'm biased. I love broccoli. I love cauliflower. I love Brussels sprouts. But I know that's not everybody's cup of tea.
Not everybody,
and So for me, I'm like, oh, that'll be easy. But for any of our listeners or our viewers, then try to find some recipes that might be fun for you. Other kinds of seasonings or something like that that can make those vegetables maybe more of a snack, a little bit more enjoyable to eat. We are used to trying to make food fun for kids so that they'll eat it, but I like to argue that we can always have a little bit of fun with the way that we eat our food.
100% agree.
Absolutely. Well, so Casey, I'm going to be linking all of the articles that you've mentioned so far in this podcast, and touching on constipation and traveling for athletes and these micro and macronutrients and everything. If people are wanting to follow you more or to learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
They can find me online. My website is RDontheRoad.org. And my Instagram is the same, RDontheRoad. So those are the two places. I'm also on Tumblr and a few other of the social medias, but those are the two main ones.
Yay. So if you go online and you look for Casey, you will find Casey. She's out there, and she's got some really great information out there. And I'm hopeful that, we can have you again on the podcast down the line when we have even more specific questions that we can use to help up our game, both with how we perform on the courts, but also how we feel up off the courts, which is really, really exciting. Thank you so much, Casey, for coming onto this podcast.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yay. So if any of you guys have questions for Casey and want to get in touch with her, you know where to find her. If you'd like to see her on this podcast again, let me know what questions you have, and we can bring her on and see if we can get some more great information on how to keep our athletic bodies happy and healthy for the sport. Other than that, thank you for listening again to the Pickleball Physio podcast. We'll see you guys on the courts.